Okay, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Shane. So welcome to Schools Forum on the 14th of December 2020. The meeting is being recorded live, and we're hopefully going to have Dave Irish join us at some point in the near future. He's having some technical issues at the moment. So in the meantime, myself, Neil Toplas, will chair the meeting until such time as Dave can join us. Just as a brief overview in terms of the information about today's meeting, if you're attending the meeting and require assistance to access the venue, please contact Democratic Services. Shouldn't be a massive problem because I think most of us are sat at home for it. In the event of a fire alarm, I'm reading the information about the meeting here. It's not all perhaps appropriate for today's meeting. Agendas with reports with exempt information should be treated as private and confidential. It's your responsibility to ensure that any such reports are kept secure. After the meeting's confidential papers should be disposed of in a secure way. This meeting is going to be recorded and broadcast on the internet. It will be confirmed at the meeting and further information will be provided. You're allowed to use devices for the purposes of recording or reporting during public sessions of the meeting. When using your devices, they must not disrupt the meeting. Please ensure that they are set to silent. Members who can't attend the meeting should submit apologies by contacting Democratic Services, and all agenda reports and minutes for Sandwell Council meetings, council details and more are available on the council's website. Okay. So, starting off on agenda item 1 then, if we've got any apologies, Shane?
The only apology I've received today is from James Topham. He may be late, and obviously Dave is apologised, Dave Irish, because of technical issues.
Right, thank you, and hopefully he'll be able to join us when he's resolved those issues. Item 2 on the agenda is declarations of interest. School Forums members to declare any interest in matters to be discussed at the meeting. I'd just like to mention that I have a declaration of interest with regards to the item number 6, which is the high needs block. Okay, item number 3 on the agenda are the minutes from the previous meeting. If we'll just go through the pages and confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of November, that they are correct record of that meeting. Now, I know some information has been passed on this earlier on today, and perhaps that can be brought up as we go in terms of matters arising. Okay, so have we got any issues on page 1 or any matters arising?
Yes, Chair. Lynn Howard did tender her apologies for that meeting, but they were missed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then on page 2. Any issues or matters arising there?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, okay, Paul.
Item 4720, last point on page 2. I'm still waiting a reply.
It's on, I think that's on my page 1 actually. Yeah. Right, Steve, are you on the meeting? Is that something you can lead us through, please?
I am on the meeting, Chair. Sorry, I'm just trying to find my way through the actions.
It's on the on my first sheet. It's item 47/20.
Right, thank you.
Last bullet point.
Yeah, to do with pupil referral unit balances.
No, it's the one in terms of the FP report that I'm inquiring about.
Sorry, Paul. Did you say? Is it the SMRA report? Yeah. Did you say?
That's correct.
Okay. Yes, I've been liaising with the DFE, so I expect that to be shared with yourselves shortly, if not already?
We haven't had it. No.
Okay. It's only trying to think, sometime last week that I gave the LA's comments on that. Okay.
We okay, Paul, to move on?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I'm on page now relating to item 48/20, membership update. Just finishing that page there. Any issues, matters arising? Okay, now page beginning 49/20, school revenue funding 2021-22 consultation document. Any matters arising on here? Okay, moving on to the next page. Still part of item 49/20. Okay, moving on, and to the next page. On this page, I've got central school services block and consultation proposals. Any issues relating there or matters arising? Okay, next page. This is the page that is outlining the formulas used for allocating schools' budgets. Options 1, 2, and 3. Matters arising. Okay, next page, middle of the page there. Sorry. Oh.
Sorry, Neil, it's Johnson. Yeah, there was just in the minutes, I emailed last week and again this morning about a couple of omissions from the minutes. There's no reference to the fact that besides the 3 options that were presented to schools, I'd also proposed that a status quo or standstill option was included. And that was actually rejected in the meeting. But I think that for context, with the replies that have come in from schools, that really needs to be in the minutes.
Okay. Can that be amended, or can they be amended to reflect that, Shane?
Sorry, yes, Chair.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Paul. John, sorry. And then, well, I think it's the last page here with item 50/20, high needs block monitoring report. Okay, and just as a matter arising from there, we have had additional information sent to us as well in Schools Forum that may be useful when discussing the high needs block agenda item a bit later on today. Okay, right, so item 4 on the agenda are Schools Forum membership.
Thank you, Chair. That's me, if I might.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Steve.
This is a very brief report to address a couple of housekeeping issues for the forum. We've identified the fact that a number of members of the forum have served in excess of the normal period that their term as specified in the Constitution. As a pragmatic approach, we're requesting that forum agree that the current membership is extended until June next year, just to make sure that the forum is enabled to conduct its business. And then the second point is just a reminder about the process to identify substitute attendees if required. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm assuming people have had a chance to have a little glance through this. Are we able to approve the current membership of the forum to remain in effect? So I'm thinking this is probably needs a vote to be able to approve this. So by raising your hands, please, if you're in favour of keeping the current membership and the representations from the different provisions, then please raise your hand. I think I've got 8 in favour, Shane. Is that what you've got? Ten now.
Yeah, I was going to say make it 10.
Yep, 10. Okay. All those against? Okay, don't have any. And any abstentions? Okay, so on that then, we will continue with the same membership into next year. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so item 5 is the schools revenue funding 21-22 consultation responses.
Okay, Chair. I'll be leading on this report.
Yep.
I am just going to highlight the salient points and the responses because we did go through in a detailed way the basis of the proposals that were included within the consultation at our last meeting. So with regards to this report, it is about helping schools to be able to set their budgets ready for the next year to allow them to give an indication of the proposals that are being put forward. The schools budget consultation was issued to schools on the 11th of November after approval at Schools Forum meeting on the 9th, with a deadline of noon the 2nd of December for responses. In terms of also, there were consultation meetings held with the Joint Executive Group, the Joint Union Panel, the Association, Sandwell governing bodies, and also the primary and secondary head teachers partnership on the dates as detailed within the report. So a total of 70 responses were received compared to 69 last year, with 60 from primary schools stroke academies and 10 from secondary schools and academies. The authority hasn't received a response this year, either collectively or individually from the unions. In terms of the consultation proposals that have been put forward, there were the three options of the first option, step change in the ratio, with a ratio of 1.127, which would be a year 2. If that's agreed, and then option 2 was the secondary schools receive 1% more above the overall increase in funding. Option 3, the national funding, the use of the national funding formula factor values, and also consulting on the pupil number growth contingency fund, the central schools block, education functions, dedelegations, and the minimum funding guarantees. So in terms of the responses, in terms of the local authority formula, there was a slim margin for option 1. So option 1, there were 32 who agreed with that proposal and 29 against. Option 2, 5 agreed with the proposal with 28 against, and option 3, 4 agreed with that proposal and 28 against. Now, there were 28 primary schools that voted no to all 3 options, with some stating that there should have been a standstill option. Others mentioned the inaccuracies of the figures brought to Schools Forum, and other comments were stated in terms of the current climate has placed additional burden on school budgets, and now is not the right time to remove more funding from the primary sector. Now, this is just a small reflection of the comments, and detailed comments are included in Appendix 5. With regards to the pupil number growth proposal, we were asking for a fund of £1,091,100, and the majority of the respondents agreed with this proposal. So there were 65 who agreed and 5 against. With the de-delegation proposals, there were 5 that were put forward, listed under section 4.20, and the responses are included in Appendix 2. Just trying to turn to it. So there was the health and safety licenses, and you can see the figures within that table, and then the breakdown for each phase. And so the responses received was 49 in terms of that can be seen in Appendix 2. So primary 49 for, 3 against, secondary 4 agreed and with none against. With the evolved annual license, there were 52 for in the primary, none against, and secondary 4 that agreed. With the union facilities time for the primary phase, 34 agreed with 18 against. Secondary phase, 1 agreed with 3 against. The school improvement service, 48 schools were agreed yes and 4 against, and 4 secondary schools agreed with none against. And then schools in financial difficulties, 37 agreed with 15 against for primary, and 2, it was equal votes in terms of 2 for and 2 against in terms of secondary. With the education function proposals for maintained schools, if we turn and look at in table 4.26, that details the proposals and the amounts. And then if you refer to Appendix 3, and we take this as a whole for maintained schools, for education functions, no, that should be education benefits team, 55 for, 3 against. Children's clothing allowance, 48 for, 10 against, and safeguarding and attendance, 53 for, 6 against. With regards to the minimum funding guarantee, the majority of respondents agreed with the MFG of between 0.5% and up to 2%. If modelling proved this was achievable within the funding. So 69 agreed, there was none against. And then the majority of respondents agreed with scaling and capping if of the MFG if it proved necessary in order to come within the funding envelope. So there were 62 agreed, 6 against. With the central school services block, in terms of the line by line that is included in the table under section 4.36, which lists the service areas and the relevant amounts that is being asked for. The majority of the respondents agreed with each of the service elements detailed in the table, and school forum members are asked to make a decision in terms of the responses. So that is included in terms of the responses in Appendix 4. So for statutory, regulatory, education and welfare and asset management, there was 64 for agreed with this and none against. Schools forum, 60 agreed with the proposal and 2 against. Admission service, 58 agreed with the proposal and 4 against. And historical commitments pension administration, 52 agreed with the proposal and 10 against.
Can I just quickly interject there, please, Rose? It was for statutory and regulatory education, welfare and asset management. It's 62, not 64.
Did I say
64, yeah.
Sorry, 662. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. I think there was just a couple of things that we just wanted to address, because I think there was some concerns about the accuracy of the information that was agreed at Schools Forum. So we just wanted to, kind of just highlight the process again. If I could just share a presentation just to go through. So just bear with me as let me see if I can find it. I think it's this one.
Okay, that's certainly on my screen now, Rose. I'm assuming that's good for everybody.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, this is just to highlight the process again, and hopefully just identify the basis of the process that we've gone through. So in terms of each year, when we're considering the school's funding formula, the DfE do issue an operational guide. And so for 2021-22, this is just an extract here in terms of reviewing and consulting on the formula. So section 15 of that states that, the department recognises the difficulties and the limitations for the local authorities in terms of dealing with COVID and trying to consult with schools, but also that, local authorities should do their best to engage in an open and transparent way with the consultation. So in terms of section 17, where it states that the DfE does not intend that changes to incorporate the 2019 EDACI data or to roll in the teachers' pay or the teachers' pension funding, which mirror the technical changes in the national funding formula, should require consultation with schools on their own, and the department plans to reflect this in the school funding regulations. So any consultation should include a demonstration of the effect of modelling such changes on an individual maintained schools and academies. So this is the basis in which the schools funding models were modelled, or the schools funding options, were modelled and included within the consultation documents. And just to kind of give you a little bit of background, the DfE, or the ESFA, Education Skills and Funding Agency, they issue what they call the Authority Pro Forma tool, which is the basis in terms of the model that is used to be able to model all the different options. And within that model, there's a number of worksheets which include pre-populated data, mainly taken from the October census. So this is nothing that the LA provides. There's also a user input sheets, so that we can incorporate if there's new schools, if there's any academy conversions, hide new places, just to name just a few of the things that we can include within the model. And then there's the calculation and output sheets. So with regards to the model that was issued for 2021-22, it does reflect the rolling in of the teacher's pay and the teacher's pension. And so all of the factors included in the model reflect that. And the APT model does incorporate a validation worksheet, which the local authority has to check that it passes all of those checks before submission to the ESFA. But just wanted to highlight that even though the model might pass all of those checks, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's approved by the ESFA, because once they receive it, then they will do some further checks, which they can't build within the model to cover all of the scenarios that they might face. So as stated previously, the three options that were modelled were done on this basis, based and completed in adherence with the operational guidance. The provisional funding allocations for 2021-22 was used, so that's the 290.1 million, which also includes the rolling in of the teachers' pay and the teachers' pension, but excludes growth funding. So we've taken a prudent approach in terms of the modelling, and those three options, as I've said previously, they did pass the validation checks. With regards to a request was made for some additional information, asking for the teachers' pay and the teachers' pension rates to be excluded from the modelling. And so as an authority, we had to work with the ESFA in order to be able to, adapt the model to provide the requested information. So because this is a provisional model, then we are allowed working with the DFE, they will allow some adaptations. But when it comes to the final model, which we will receive hopefully within the next week and a half, that model will not be, we can't amend it in any way, shape or form. And so it just to highlight, as was included when this additional information was requested, that some factors were adjusted. So the ALPU, the minimum funding guarantee, the minimum funding value, and the minimum per pupil levels. And so ultimately that means not all of the provisional allocation is fully distributed throughout that particular model in terms of requested information. So this was issued, it was done purely as a comparison exercise and because it was requested, but it doesn't really form part of the consultation process. And when it was issued, we did state at the time that it wasn't to be used as a basis to plan budgets for 2020-21. Let me just see if I can stop sharing. Okay, so I just want to include that. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you, Rose. Has anybody got any questions relating to the slides there? Okay, so I'm assuming you've sort of gone through all the different sections now, Rose. Are we in a position, do you think, that we can start making some decisions and approving or not approving the various recommendations?
Yes. So if you look under section 1, then it outlines each of the proposals that need to be agreed. So in terms of, just to say that in terms of the local authority formula, all school members can vote, and the early years representative on that particular element. And then with regards to, so that's for the three options for the minimum funding guarantee and the pupil number growth. Then when it comes to the de-delegations and the education, sorry, if I talk about de-delegations first, the de-delegations, that will be agreed by the maintained school representatives only and by phase. So the primary representatives will vote for the primary elements of the de-delegations. The secondary maintained representatives will vote for the secondary elements. With the education functions, that is for all maintained schools to vote on. And then the central school services block can be agreed by all forum members.
Okay, just had a question come through, Rose, from Jamie Berry. Can I check, do the consultation responses for de-delegations just reflect maintained school responses?
Yes. Yes, it does.
Okay, is that okay, Jamie? Okay, I've got a question come through from Gary Limford as well now.
Yep.
Yeah, can I just ask, the number of responses from primary schools that voted against all of them, is that not enough to warrant further discussion on that matter at Schools Forum this afternoon? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear. I'm just wondering, in terms of, I would pass that question over to Chris, if he's happy to take that one.
Yeah, I mean, it is entirely up to Forum to decide when they're ready to vote on this. So should they wish to have a discussion around this or make a statement around what they feel the position is, then they can do that at this point, and the rest of the group can vote on whether or not they feel that's appropriate as well.
Okay, I think for me, the fact that it's been raised, I think would suggest that it's probably worth some additional discussion, and the fact as well that the vote is so close. I've just got, is it Jamie there again? Jamie, do you want to come in on this?
Yeah, just it's linked to what Gary just asked. Really, is there an option if Schools Forum felt that there should be an option for a standstill status quo? Is that something, you know, if we're debating it, is that something that's possible, or is it an absolute no and we have to vote for A, B or C if that's part of the consultation?
Okay, shall I answer this one, because this is the tricky one, isn't it? It was discussed at the previous meeting, Jamie, this one, and the Forum did not put a fourth option in at that point. However, this has happened previously. If I give you some history on this, in that when the formula wasn't moving, the secondary schools would be not voting for one of the options that was put forward, and then there would be a commentary that would be sent then alongside that would go to the cabinet members to make the decision. So I think it's very similar to that position, but reversed from a few years round, so that we're in a position of primary schools, I think, from looking at what I can see here, have indicated what they feel would be the best of the options they have got. However, a number of those primary schools have also written they would prefer to have had a standstill option as a choice. So I think as a forum, we have to consider what's the best option that people would be prepared to go for out of the three, so that Cabinet understand what that is, but also then make a statement about what the feeling of a number of primary schools is around the standstill option as well. So that it's clear when Cabinet get both, they understand what the tricky issue is that Forum have been dealing with.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Right, okay, there's a rash of hands gone up now, so we'll just take them in order here. We've got Gary, is your hand still up from last time, or have you got a follow-up question?
No, sorry, I'll stick it down.
Okay, Jamie, you're still there, right? And S. Baker. If you're talking, S. Baker, I think you're on mute.
I've unmuted. Sorry.
Oh, thank you.
It's Sally. So,
Sally, thanks, Sally.
Just for the record, the 4 primary reps at the last School Forum meeting were new to School Forum. It was our first meeting, and we'd only received the papers less than 24 hours before the meeting took place. So for the record, we were a little bit wet behind the ears, and maybe had we have known, you know, that there was the option to think about a standstill, then maybe that would have been something that would have been put forward.
Yeah, Sally, I think that's a very valid point, because it took a while to get the reps together from the primary sector, and I think that's why it's necessary for us to put a commentary next to the options that are selected today, so that Cabinet understand the decisions and why the decisions are being made. Okay, thank you, Sally. Okay,
Mr. J. Topham.
Yeah, Chris, this is obviously goes back to the point that we've just been raising. I mean, we've had this conversation at secondary level since I think Dame Enid was the head here. I think the ratio has stayed the same since then. We had the meeting, myself and Mark went to Cabinet with a couple of primary colleagues, and they said that the way forward, it had to change, and the way forward was that we would get together, which is what happened. And the proposal was that the formula moved on 3 subsequent years, which was voted for last year by the primaries, in fact by everybody. So it just feels that is there any point in any of these meetings if that we've had, because a lot of time went into that, and you know, myself and Mark and some of the other secondary colleagues put a lot of effort into that. So it's just really, Chris, sort of, was there any point in those meetings if all we're going to do now is we're going to have to relook at it after it was agreed last year and the year before that?
No, and what I'm saying here, James, is we're not really looking at it. We're making a decision based on the options we've got. You're absolutely right in that we got a clear steer from Cabinet that we had to change the ratio, and they wanted schools to make the decision on how it was best to do that. And it was a really difficult set of meetings, as you know, to actually get to a point of how to do it. The issue with this one is that it becomes a Cabinet decision. So they will have to know what the thoughts are from all parties on this one, in the same way as they had to know what the secondary school's thoughts were previously around keeping it the same previously without changing it. So I think they have to have a rounded view. And what set primaries, I believe, last year, and a few secondaries did as well, was to vote for what they thought was a transitional move between ratios, which would mean that we didn't get suddenly a national funding formula which decimated primary schools because of the cuts they would take to budgets, and we took a slow move to 1.129. The issue, as you know, is that whenever a school is in a position of funding change, every school will always pick the funding change that has the least implications for them. And we saw that for 15 years prior to any changes in the ratio. But there was a clear steer that we had to do it. So in terms of worst of all evils, is what we were working on is making a model that took a lot of discussion in very worthwhile meetings. And I think what Cabinet need to understand is how difficult this is for schools to make this decision, because everybody is going to be making sure that they've got enough money for their own area and their own school. When we follow this through, we obviously know we get to 1.129, which is still not at national funding formula levels and still below the national average. So there will be need for another discussion at that point around what we do. But this clearly is not going to be a straightforward decision. And I think as long as we at the forum can make a decision around which of the three options we feel is the better for the moment, but the underlying commentary would always still have to go to Cabinet, because Rose will have to report that. So the strong feelings of primaries do have to be reported at this stage, because they do have to consider that.
I understand that, Chris. It was the point I was just making was about sort of the direction that we were told that Cabinet gave the steer to this group and to both secondaries and primaries, and also the decision that was made last year, and so that was all. I understand that obviously, as our views had to be heard all those 15 years, the primaries' views have to be heard too. I understand that.
Can I just bring in a point as well? In terms of we are required as a local authority to consult annually. So even though there might be a direction of travel every year, we still have to consult on this. We can't just take it for granted and not consult. We are required to consult.
Okay, thanks, Rose. Wendy Lawrence.
Hi, I just wanted to notice as well that at the last meeting I hadn't been signed in, so actually I couldn't vote on, the option which John Smallman said. So even though I was at the meeting, I wasn't able to vote. I think I'm obviously very new to it, and I understand there's been a lot of history from what we're hearing from Cabinet, which I guess, and I do understand that, but I still feel, our job, or my job as primary rep, is to also give the voice of the other primary heads, isn't it? And I suppose it's a bit more difficult for us because we haven't heard, obviously, what's gone on. There's obviously a lot of history there, isn't there, which we're hearing for the first time now. It feels like we've still got to represent, obviously, secondary heads have to represent their schools, that our job as the primary reps is to represent it, and they have definitely made their feelings clear in, obviously, how they voted, and also, in the comments, which seem to have quite a common thread, I would say, through them as well.
Okay, thanks, Wendy. Jamie, and then it'll be John.
Okay, just to echo really what Wendy said, being new to forum, I'm not aware of all the history, but clearly there's been a lot of conversation in the past about a cabinet steer. But I think it also has to be noted that this is quite an exceptional year for all sectors. You know, we've all been put under financial pressures this year because of COVID. And whilst that cabinet steer may have been there previously, I think there has to be an acknowledgement that we are in slightly different times now to this time last year. And also just to, I suppose, emphasise the point that whilst option 1 has got the most in terms of yes votes from the primary sector, all 3 options have got more no votes, which indicates that the primary sector probably have a stronger feeling that there should be a standstill or a no option for all 3. So I think that has to be noted and fed back to Cabinet, that there is a strong feeling amongst the primary heads that none of those options are the most suitable option.
Okay, thanks, Jamie. John?
Yeah, thank you, Neil. I think it would just be worth pointing out as well that when the original conversations were going on and the steer was given from cabinet member, the cabinet in Sandwell, in fact the whole council really, was radically different in terms of the people that make up cabinet, and it was a different cabinet member at that point in time. We've had no steer from the current cabinet member, and actually in all the many years that I've been on Schools Forum, we've never actually seen a cabinet member. It would be quite useful for a cabinet member to come along and at least listen, if not discuss, with Schools Forum at some point.
Okay, I think what I can just reiterate that we had 4 members of School Forum who went to Cabinet to discuss this, who were head teachers previously, and what I don't want to do is underplay the feelings of the primary head teachers in the forum here at the moment, because I think everyone recognised that was a tricky decision, but that was the whole cabinet that they saw. Now, clearly there have been some cabinet member changes since then, but there hasn't been a steer to change the direction we've been at, because I have checked that with cabinet members at this stage. But clearly the final decision doesn't get made until we get to January. So we know that when this goes to cabinet, they will need to see all of the arguments for and against, which is what is set out in this paper at the moment. So, I mean, I hope that helps clarify where we are at the moment.
Do you want to come back to that, John? Are you okay?
Yeah, but that's fine. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Wendy, is your hand still up, or have you got like a follow-up? Gary?
Thanks for that, Chris. I think it's really important that all of the evidence that's been received from primary and secondary schools is actually taken to the cabinet, not just what's been chosen to be put into what's come to us this afternoon, so that the cabinet can see exactly what we're up against. I have been on Schools Forum. This is my second stint. I put my hand up at Partnership to stand in for somebody last week, and I find myself here again for the second time around. And I do remember all of the conversations that we've had over the years with secondary colleagues. But in my long years in headship, this is the worst year that I've known for children coming in not being ready for school. Less than half of the children in our nursery are school ready. And I think any further change away from money into the primary schools, it will be completely detrimental to where we want the children to be before they leave us to go to secondary. So I really do think the paperwork needs to really show, without any doubt, the complete response from the primary colleagues, not just part of what's been put in this paper for us.
Okay, thank you, Gary. In terms of that, Chris, Rose, and the sort of the overall feeling before we go to a vote, who would be responsible for sort of taking the commentary and this sort of position to the cabinet?
Okay, well, what happens is finance will collate all the information for me. Myself and Leslie Hagger will take it to cabinet so they understand what the ins and outs are of the process. The final report itself gets published, I think, 2 weeks before, and there will be papers that will be seen by the general public, and there'll be papers that the Cabinet see, so we can make sure that all the information goes forward to them, and they get the full picture. I think it's always the case that we want the Cabinet to make a full picture based on full information, a full decision made on full decision information they have to hand. So we're really happy to pass that across. We have done in previous years in the same way when the vote was the other way around. So we are happy to do that. We just need them well informed when they make a decision.
Is it appropriate for individuals on Schools Forum and from other schools to write directly or via yourselves to Cabinet?
It is. It won't be included in the Cabinet reports, but if they wish to do that, they can always do that, because Cabinet will always listen to anything that's being said by members of this forum.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Paul, Sean?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to raise a point, though. I understand it's very difficult to argue against or for something that's going to give you a reduction in funding. And I realise that the secondaries have been having this hard slog over many years. But the case is that it's got to get to national funding formula in any case at one point in time. And the longer it's delayed, the bigger the cliff edge for primaries. Is there any other way that we could actually work together? I mean, to my mind, the whole point of having the steady pace forward was to actually allow time for primaries to adjust. That at that time was ultimately got to happen anyway. And is it not realistic that we've got to move forward? I know it hurts. We've got to move forward because there will be a time when we've got to go to national funding formula.
Paul, I think that's an excellent point. It's coming down the line. In terms of what we're trying to do is pick the right moment to make any changes. And last year there was a change in the amount of dedelegations we had. We tried to reduce those, so it put more money in the pot. This year there's a significant reduction in pupil place planning, which puts more money in the pot as well. So that offsets some of the changes in ratio anyway as we go forward. I think the difficulty this year is that the way in which different elements of budget are being put into it, which makes it harder to unpick by some schools because of the way staffing costs are included in that funding. So this year we try to make sure that there is an element of additional funding out of the top slices that would have come out that are now still back in the budget. Next year we'd have to look at it and see if there's any other significant thing we could change as well.
Okay, thanks, Chris. And then if we take your statement now, Wendy, and then I think we'll sort of move towards having some sort of vote, conscious that time's moving on. Okay, Wendy?
Yeah, and just saying about moving towards national funding formula, and I think in a normal year, potentially most people would agree, but I think just to reiterate, I think it's what Jamie said, that this is no ordinary year, is it? And I think the financial pressures from all sectors, from primary and secondary, because of COVID, makes it a completely different year too. You know, when we had the step change and when all of that started, and probably when Cabinet made their thoughts at the beginning, little did any of us know that coronavirus was around the corner, and I do feel that has changed the financial landscape for all sectors really. And I do think that's a really important point to be noted, for everyone.
Okay, thanks, Wendy. Okay, and then just finally, before we move to a vote, questions come through from Jamie. Before we vote on this section, can we clarify if we are allowed to vote for an option 4 of a standstill status quo?
Okay, as that hasn't been part of the consultation document, we can't actually vote on it here. So what I'd be looking for is either, and for those who don't like the options, they would abstain, or they would vote for the option that they feel is the one that causes least injury, or in terms of how they want to carry forward. When we've had this previously, secondary heads have moved between the two. They've either gone for abstaining in a block because they didn't like the options, or they went for voting for the one that they thought was least likely to affect them. Now, from what you've got here in front of I think it would be sensible to make sure that the commentary around what option 4 goes clearly to the cabinet, and then others would then vote for, and then you would vote for the option still out of 1, 2 and 3, so that the cabinet had a clear steer out of those 3 options, which would be the one that, should you not have a standstill budget, which would be the one you prefer, so they understand that. It would be that choice, but the choice is yours really on how you wish to go forward with that.
Okay, right, so are we ready then, I suppose? So I think what we'll do, if we vote for the various options and then see where we are after that, I think. Right, so if we then, as a show of hands, we looking at the recommendation, the Schools Forum makes a recommendation on the following consultation: the preferred option to use for calculating the school funding formula for 2021-22. So all those in favour of option 1, if you could raise your hands, please. Oh, sorry, Rose, can you just clarify who can vote on this particular question?
Right.
Chair, I don't know whether you want me to read out and do a named vote. Do you think that would be better?
It's just as in who's entitled to vote for this particular question.
Okay, if Rose wants to clarify then.
Yeah, so all school members are able to vote for this, plus the early years representative. So it's school members. So the non-school members are the unions and the post-16, but everybody else should be able to vote on it. If I just do a quick call so that everybody's aware. So Sally Baker, James Barry, Gary Linford, Wendy Lawrence, Sue Ramsey, Bob Patel, John Smallman, Lynn Howard, Paul Schoen, Carol Gallant, Neil Topless, James Topham, Dave Irish, Mark Arnold, Lucy Bray, Kevin Morgan and Zed Padda.
Okay, so that's for those people then. If your preferred option is number 1, if you raise your hand now. So I've got 5 there. Is that what you've got, Shane?
I'm just going down the list, Chair, sorry. Yes.
Yeah, you agree 5? Okay. All those against option 1? Okay, I've got 3. And those who are abstaining? I've got 5, Shane, for abstains.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Okay, same people again then. If option 2 is your preferred option, can you please raise your hand now? Okay, none on there. If option 2, if it's not your preferred option, then it's not going to be by default, it becomes a non-option, doesn't it, I suppose? Are you happy we move on to option 3, or do you need a specific show of hands for non-option, Shane, and for abstains?
I think we will still have a show of hands for against, yeah.
Okay then, if you're against option 2, please raise your hand.
Oh.
Okay, I've got 12, Shane.
Yeah. 12.
Yeah. Okay. Option 2 abstains. I think we've got 1.
1.
Okay then. Same for option 3. All those in favour of option 3, please raise your hand. Okay, we've got 1.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, those against option 1, please raise your hand.
Surely you mean option 3, Neil?
Oh, sorry, yeah, option 3.
Eleven, Chair.
Yeah, we've got 11. And option 3 abstains. I've got 2.
2.
Right, Chris, would you mind just sort of refreshing our minds in terms of what you suggested with regards to an option 4?
I suggest that having got, I think you got a fairly clear vote going forward,
Yep.
but you can see that there was a large abstention on option 1
Yep.
within that. Okay, so I think you need a comment next to option 1 to state that the schools forum was split with primary colleagues, from when I read the hands, from primary colleagues suggesting that a 4th option should have been available for a standstill budget. Therefore, they abstained from this vote. Okay, then it's really clear that Cabinet understand the views.
Okay. I'm assuming everybody's happy with that. If you're not, then now's your opportunity to say. Gary, you've got your hand. Oh, no, he's put his hand. Gary, your hand's down.
Sorry, Neil.
Okay, right. Thanks very much, everybody. Okay, moving on then. So we're on the recommendation 1.2. The Schools Forum makes a decision on the following consultation proposals. First one being the level at which...
Sorry, Chair, can I interrupt? We've got a comment in the side comment saying Dave Irish is unable to connect at the moment. Should he be asked for his vote? I think we do have to follow that up afterwards as he's trying to get in with technical difficulties.
Actually, I think I saw his hand up, Chris.
Right,
He's kept very quiet. He's left me to do all the hard work with this particular item on the agenda.
Okay. If Dave's in, that's fine. Thank you.
I'll just see, because he may well have dropped out again. Let me just check.
No, I am here.
Oh, he is here.
Thank you.
Shall I just carry on, Dave, since I'm in the swing of it now, or you?
Absolutely, Neil. That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I'm sure you'll be able to catch up where we are on the minutes next time, because it's been quite a lengthy meeting up to date.
Yeah, I will do. Thank you.
Right, okay, so on item 1.2 then, Schools Forum makes a decision on the following consultation proposals, level at which to set the pupil number growth contingency fund. And that...
Sorry, Neil. Have you missed out the MFG? So under the the second bullet point.
You're absolutely right. Sorry. So it's 1.1 bullet point 2 implementation of an MFG of between +5% and +2%. That's referenced in Appendix 1, and you can see the votes from the schools consulted in the boxes on there.
And can I just correct you as well? It's plus 0.5% up to +2%.
So it's 0.05%.
Plus 0.5%. Yeah.
Right. Okay. There's a slight difference then on what we've got in front of us. I don't know if it's just me. I've got on my agenda item number 5 on the initial page. I've got implementation of an MFG between 0.5%, and then I've got as item 6 on Appendix 1 an MFG of 0.05%.
Say it again, sorry. Where's the other point?
On Appendix 1, It's on page 10 on my sort of summary here. Question number 6. Please indicate whether you agree with MFG 5.05%.
Yeah.
So can you just clarify what it is we're actually going to be voting for?
Yeah.
Rose?
So it's plus 0.5% and up to 2%.
Right. Okay. So 0.5% to 2%.
Yeah.
Okay. So all those in favour of the MFG between 0.5 and 2%, raise your hands, please. Oh, sorry. Can you just clarify who can vote for this one, Rose? It's the same again.
Same again. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. If you're in favour of this, please raise your hands. Got 13 in favour.
Chair, I don't think Darren Barton's on the list for this one.
No, he's not on. He's not on the list for this one.
I haven't got him with his hand up
He
on
has got
mine.
his hand up.
I've got 12 votes on for Shane.
He's got 11. I've only got 11.
I've got 13. Let me see. 1, 3. 12.
Yeah, 12.
12, yeah.
Yep, okay. So 12 in agreement for. Those against, please raise your hands. That's 0. Those abstaining, please raise your hands. That's 0 as well, Shane. Thank you. Now we're moving on to recommendation 1.2. The Schools Forum makes a decision on the following consultation proposals, the level at which to set the pupil number growth contingency fund. Okay.
Yeah, which is. Sorry.
Just trying to refer people on my notes here.
Yeah. So that's the 1,091,100.
Yep. Okay. Those in favour, please raise your hands. We've got 13 votes for that one.
13, Chair.
Yep. Is that the same people again for that vote, Rose?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, it is.
Okay, thanks. All those against? That's 0. And any abstentions? No. Okay, thank you. Then we've got the delegation budget proposals. They're on Appendix 2. I think given the differentials in the fors and against from the individual schools, are we happy that we take those in their entirety, Rose, rather than vote for them individually?
I think it's best to vote for them individually.
Okay.
So this vote needs to be taken by the maintained schools only, and by phase as well, because they can vote different things. So if we potentially go with the primary phase first and then the secondary for each proposal.
Okay. I've just had a message come in from, is it Jamie? JB?
Yeah, just wanted to check. Are we allowed to say a few words on the de-delegations before we vote? Because there were a couple of comments that I just wanted to make, or do we have to go straight to the vote?
No, you can have a few comments.
Okay, there were just a couple of points from me. Obviously, I can see the responses in terms of majorities and, can vote accordingly. But I think the feedback that I'd had from talking to fellow heads and also my own feedback was that some of the blocks of de-delegations were quite broad. And I wonder whether, if not this year, then next year, whether we could look at those more specifically and have a little bit more time in the review period up to this consultation. So, for example, it would be useful to separate some, such as attendance and safeguarding, because they offer quite different services, and I wonder whether that's an option for next year, if not this year. And then the second point that I wanted to make was about union facilities time, because I think that from the emails that were circulated in the consultation period, it's probably one of the most contentious items, even though there's a majority potentially in favour. And again, even if not for this year, for next year, I wonder whether there needs to be some more work in the lead up to the consultation around what the de-delegation offers us. I mean, even the fact that unions have not made a representation in response to the consultation, I think gives us something to think about, or certainly something for the heads to think about in terms of whether we vote to de-delegate for facilities time. And again, I think that we could do with some more work next year, if not this.
Okay, thank you for that. Darren, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm happy to take some. I totally agree what's just been said. The figure of the de-delegated figure of the trade unions, that there's past couple of years there has been a carry forward with regarding that, and I'm happy for that figure to be looked at and to make a more accurate figure, because we are aware that it is public money and schools' money. In the past, the trade unions have submitted a breakdown of the time that they have spent in meetings and consultations and developing policies and representing members throughout school, and I'm happy for that. And when that's been requested, Schools Forum has been given that information, and there is something called a joint union panel, where the trade unions meet with the local authority, and they usually do side panels to discuss these things. And if Chris Ward or would happy to suggest a few things, and the trade unions would be happy to work alongside that. But I do totally agree with what's just been said.
Thank you, Darren. Do you want to come back on that, Jamie?
Yeah, just very briefly, just to say, obviously, you know, I'm all for union time, but I think the examples that were given around some of the policies that were listed are either very old or very out of date. And I just think that there's a lot of questions at the moment from talking to other heads about whether the facilities time is value for money, given that the impact statements or the impact work of what we've been presented is quite out of date or old. And as I say, the fact that even with this consultation, in the report of this consultation, there was no individual or joint union representation for this consultation. And I think that causes a question amongst heads about whether that is a value for money then, to be paying the unions to almost act on our behalf, but yet there's been no response to this consultation itself.
Do you want to come back on that, Darren, or I've got Andy Timmins who's sort of waiting in the wings?
Yeah, I'll come back on that. I totally agree that the unions have submitted as part of a consultation on these matters in the past. Usually I am General Secretary of the National Education Union. Currently I've gone back teaching full time at the moment, so I'm glad from the comments you've made. I'm happy to pass them back to my colleagues regarding what you've just said.
Thanks, Darren. Andy?
Thanks, Neil. It was just a point about the policies. Jamie, you've obviously brought that one up. I mean, part of the issue, I suppose, here is that it's JUP are able to consult on policies, but they're not necessarily the instigator of the policies, and that's an HR issue. So the policies will always be brought to JUP to obviously consult on, but they can't necessarily consult on things that aren't presented. But your points in terms of policies were noted, and that was taken back. So HR have taken some point from that, and they will obviously, I suppose, look to make sure those policies come through rather more frequently. I know some were picked up, so those points were noted, but that isn't specifically a role for JUP. JUP's role is to actually consult and obviously provide feedback on those. I think it's just worth a point there in terms of their time. So they are using the time, but it depends what they're actually fed or given by HR before, you know, to enable those to come out to schools.
Thanks, Andy. Okay, are we ready to move on to a vote then? Okay, right. So, taking each item independently then, and voting with primary colleagues and then with secondary colleagues. So, the de-delegated budget consultation response for health and safety licences and subscriptions. In favour from the primary colleagues. Could show of hands, please. We've got 6, Shane. You agree, Shane? 6?
Sorry, Chair, my microphone keeps sticking. We've got Lynn Howard, I believe she's Academy, and Gary.
So they can't vote on this one then?
Do not, definitely maintained.
Okay, so that's down to 4 then. Oh, no, sorry, 5 then.
Lynn says it's maintained school, did she say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just
Oh,
Gary
sorry.
trying to sneak in there and influence the vote.
So that's 5.
Okay, those people who are objecting to health and safety licenses and subscriptions, please raise your hands. No. And any abstentions? No. Okay, primary colleagues again. The Evolve annual licence. Those in favour? 5. Thank you. Those against? Those abstaining? Okay, thank you. Primaries again, union facilities time. Those in favour? That's 4. Is John able to vote there, Rose?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, it's 4 in favour of union facilities. All those against union facilities? Those abstaining from union facilities? 1. Thank you. School improvement services. All those in favour? Primary. 5 I've got. All those against? It's none. And all those abstaining? None. Primary, schools in financial difficulties. All those in favour? 4, 5. All those against? None. And abstains. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, secondary colleagues. Health and safety licences and subscriptions. All those in favour? 2. 1, sorry. All those against? Can I, all those up? Can I just well, just start this one again? So I think there's a bit of, the hands seem to be going up and down at the wrong times here, or I'm just sort of misreading it. Right, so for secondary colleagues, if you're in favour of the health and safety licences and prescriptions, please put your hand up. Right, so I've got 1, which is Paul. Okay, if you are against, please put your hand up. It's none. If you're abstaining, it's none. Okay, in favour of the Evolve annual licence, secondary colleagues, none. If you're against, oh, are you against there, Paul?
No, I was for it.
Sorry, I'm going a bit quick.
No.
Okay, so Paul's 4. Anybody against the Evolve? And any abstentions? Okay, unions facilities time. If you're in favour, please raise your hands. If you're against? Okay, if you're abstaining, just the 1. School improvement services, in favour? None. Against? None. And abstain? None. No votes there. Okay, schools in financial difficulties. If you're in favour, raise your hand there, please. Secondaries. 1. If you're against, that's none. And if you're abstaining, it's also none. Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry, Chair, could we just confirm the 4D option, please? Because we've got no abstentions or nobody for or against.
Well, I think Paul's the only person who's voting on this. So, Paul.
Was Paul abstaining, or did he want to fall for that one?
So, school improvement services
would be. I'd vote for it.
Vote for it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, right. So, moving on, we are still on 1.2. Schools Forum makes the decision on the following consultation proposals. We are now on bullet point 3, which is the education functions and budget proposals. Does anybody wants? It's on appendix 3, page 13 on my notes here. Anybody want any comments on this? Otherwise, we'll take each individual item. And again, Rose, is this for secondary and primary to do separately?
No, they do it together.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anybody wants any comments around this particular budget area? Okay, moving on then. So, all those in favour of the education functions?
That should be the education benefits team. There for number
Is that
one.
number 1, reference 1?
It's education benefits team should be, yeah.
Thanks, Rose. Okay, if you're in favour of that support, please raise your hand.
Can I just say as well, sorry, this is not for the academies to vote. This is just maintain schools.
Thank you. Okay, I've got 6 votes for 4.
Yes, 6, Chair.
Yeah. Anybody against the education functions benefits team? That's 0. And abstentions? Also 0. Thank you. Right. The children's clothing allowance. All those in favour, please raise your hand now. I have 6 on there, Shane.
Yes, Chair.
Okay. Those against? None. And any abstentions? Also none. Thank you. Then we've got safeguarding and attendance. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's 6.
Yes, Chair.
All those against? 0. And any abstentions? Also 0. Okay, and then the final item on this particular agenda is the vote now for the Central School Services Block proposals. Before we start that, it's on Appendix 4, page 14 on my notes here. Does anybody want to raise any issues or comments around the allocation of the Central School Services? Okay, right, we shall proceed to vote. Again, Rose, is this everybody?
This is everybody now. Yeah,
Yeah.
all school forum members.
Academies, everybody? Okay, right. Do we take each item in its
Yes,
separately?
we should take it line by line.
Right, okay. As in the expenditure items or starting with the provisional allocation?
No, so just starting with the statutory and regulatory education
Right,
welfare.
okay then. So everybody in favour of the expenditure on the statutory and regulatory education welfare and asset management, please raise your hands. Well, got 13, Shane.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, all those against? Any zero? Any abstentions? And also zero. Thank you. Schools Forum funding. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I've got 14 on there, I think.
I've got 13.
13.
Yeah, okay. And those against? That's zero. And any abstentions? Again, zero. Okay, allocations for the admissions service. Please raise your hands if you're in favour. $13.
Yeah, 13-4.
Okay, all those against? And any abstentions? Oh, sorry, Kevin, can you just confirm is that an abstention?
Sorry, Neil. Was down.
Okay, so we have 13 in agreement, none for against, and no abstainers. Okay, so finally, the historical commitment, pensions administration. In favour, please raise your hand. Okay, what, 13? You agree with that, Shane?
Yes, 13, yeah.
Okay, all those against? Zero. And abstentions? Also zero. Okay, thank you very much. I think that is all of agenda item number 5. In which case we can now move on to agenda item number 6, which is the SEN High Needs Block period 7 monitoring report. Okay. Wendy, is your hand raised?
Yeah, sorry. Is there anything to be voted on, or on the last item, was it just information? Because something's just come up where I could do with leaving, but obviously if it needs to be voted on, I'll stay.
On the High Needs Block, it's for information.
Okay, right. Thank you. I'm just going to leave the meeting then.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, who's picking this one up for us?
I'll go through Neil, Stuart.
Thank you.
I'll go through. These are the projections on the High Needs Block going through to, excuse me, going through to the end of the financial year, the 31st of March. The budget at the moment is 48 million. The in-year surplus is expected to be 137,000. The deficit brought forward from last year is 561,000. So at the moment, the potential deficit overall at the end of the financial year will be 424,000. That will have first call on the 2021-22 high needs block grant settlement. Table 1 shows the variances against each budget head. So I'll go through each one of the main variances below. Out of borough placements is made up of 2 elements. There's out of borough placements placed in independent private schools and mainstream schools, and out of borough maintained academies and special schools. The variance overspend on the out of borough maintained schools is quite small. It's £60,000. The biggest variance on that budget head is on the independent special schools, and that's at 1 million, just over £1 million. The reason for that is we've had a significant number of students, roughly 33, placed in independent schools throughout the year prior to this budget being, after this budget was pulled together. I initially estimated for 10 places, but as I said in there, we have 33 placed out of borough. That's predominantly due to an increase in EHCP assessments and a lack of specialist provision within the borough. Pupil placement top-up is about £695,000 overspent at the moment based on the information that we've currently got. Again, that is due to an increase in assessments for EHCPs. So between January 20 and now, we've had roughly 150 additional students net increase in the number of students with EHCPs that we're now supporting in our Sandwell maintained and academy schools. Hospital crew, this was agreed by Schools Forum as part of the budget consultation period last year, and it was agreed that the places would rise from 40 to 50, so there's an extra £100,000 in there, which is now shown against the hospital crew line. Previously, it was incorporated in the other developments funding, so it's been moved now to show where it is actually being allocated against. SEN support services are 141,000 underspent, and that's mainly due to staff vacancies and timing delays in being able to fill the vacancies because of COVID and redeployments and so on and so forth. Support for inclusion is £585,000 underspent. That again is predominantly staff vacancies. And also the preventing secondary exclusions, which was agreed at Schools Forum last January, and that's 199,000 that we've not appointed to any of that team for, and that will be something that's under discussion again going forward into 21-22. But it's predominantly a full underspend at the moment. Again, the others are staff vacancies due to timing delays and vacancies during the year. Alternative provision is an underspend. Now, this is due to a reduction in the number of pupils placed in AP settings following the introduction of the alternative provision panel in September 19. It was when the budget was pulled together, there was roughly 201 pupils in alternative provision. During the summer term, which included 134 in year 11, those students have now left the system. We're currently funding 71 pupils through the high needs block, and the AP panel have only placed 12 pupils into alternative provisions in September 19. The panel was still sitting during the lockdown period in the summer term. Referrals were obviously very low at that point. They may increase going forward now schools are back fully, but obviously that was expected to be an underspend on there, but in order to be prudent, I left it at the higher level to make sure that we could cover any eventuality for that one. SEN developments always shows an underspend because that's the budget head that we use at the beginning of the year when we do the budget setting exercise, where any surplus in year is predominantly left in that budget heading so that we can see where it is, because we have to bring it all back to nil. So there's always an underspend on there, which is then used to offset any overspends anywhere else across the budget heads. Exclusions and reintegration is 75 underspend, and that again is related to staffing. We've only just managed to appoint one member of staff, and there is one vacancy still on there that was agreed at Schools Forum in January 19. The other SEN funding I've left in table 2, you can see there that the main difference there is again non-statutory SEN support, which is again not being able to fill places, vacancies straight away, and we're carrying vacancies there. Provision. We'll go on to the place planning now. Provision, focused provision and special school place funding. Currently showing 16% vacancies at the moment. There is 33 vacancies across our focused provision schools, and there is currently 9 consultations out with schools which will reduce these vacancies to 24 once agreed. You can see where all the vacancies are against each school, saying what we've currently got available, what the current occupancy is, and what the vacancies are. Special schools, the commission places are the places that the local authority purchased. It is in a financial year. It is not the actual numbers that schools can take on roll, because that is obviously determined by building capacity. So the number that we actually physically commission. As you can see, there's very little vacancies within the special schools. Orchard is at capacity, Meadows is at capacity, Westminster is slightly over, and Shenstone is roughly at capacity as well. There's normally a little bit of delay in capacity and occupancy at this time in the year, because obviously we have a phased intake from September. With the special schools, all the pupils don't go in on the 1st of September like they normally do in mainstream school with phased transfers. So there is a little bit of a delay in some of the students going on roll. The data for the PRU's been run on our Synergy system, and it's as at the 1st of December. So below is the commission places that we purchased in the PRU's at the beginning of the year. It doesn't fluctuate, it's always the same. The occupancy at the 1st of December and the vacancies. As I said, these have been picked up off our Synergy system, so it's what we've currently got on roll on our Synergy system at this point in time. So that's the end of the report. So if there's any questions that you need to raise, then please continue.
Thanks, Julie. I'm not sure whether everybody else received the information that I did, but obviously you sent through the independent schools data, which was really useful in terms of looking at the spread of the costings per place, per student that's using alternative provisions or out of borough or independent schools. I think overall it was, in line with my suspicions, if you like, and that the SEMH group of students are very much the lion's share of the pot with regards to these alternative provisions, with 75 kids on the document that you sent. And I understand there's a snapshot position with regards to when these numbers are taken, but essentially sort of just off sort of rounding up the numbers, it looks as though there's about £3.75 million on SEMH independent provisions. I'm just wondering how these numbers and these sorts of placement datas are being used to plan an SEN strategy in terms of what the LA and the authority will be doing with regards to bringing as many of these out of borough placements back in borough with regards to reducing the costs for their placements, and then sort of moving forward as the population grows and planning for increases in number of kids.
Can I take this one, Julie?
Yes, yeah. Fine. Okay. Before you do that, can I just say, Neil, you've just said, I'm sure Moira will cover this, about students coming back into borough. I mean, obviously we have to take into account parental preference as well. when we bring students back into Borough South, it's not something that at the moment we can force, but I'm sure Maura will cover that when she goes through her dialogue.
Okay, so in terms of the SEN strategy, in terms of the outer borough independent places, particularly for those with SEMH, as you'll see from the data that we gave you, around about 57 of those pupils that are placed in independent or out of borough schools are roughly at the same cost per place as, for instance, Shenston. What we're seeing coming through in terms of our data and our predictive data is that there's a lot more children with ASD complex needs coming through the system. So in terms of differentials between the cost of a place for an SEMH child and the cost of a place for a complex needs child, the differential between some of these places, for instance, from Orchard to, let me have a look, to Longdon is around £20,000, from Orchard to Rowan is about £50,000, and from Orchard to Hidford is about £60,000. So in terms of place planning, what we're seeing is the rise of the complex needs early on, and the lack of places within our complex needs schools would suggest that in terms of our strategy going forward, we need to concentrate more on improving the places for our complex needs children, particularly around the money that we've got left within the SEND Capital Grant. In terms of the SEMH children, yes, I mean, we would love to bring a lot of those back in borough, but like Judy said, a lot of those children have already been placed, some of them in place by social care as well. So I think our main focus for the strategy is to look at our ASD complex needs cohorts and then see how we can accommodate the SEMH later on, because at the moment we're finding SEMH children, particularly secondary children, a lot easier to place than we are kind of like those younger children with complex ASD needs.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Maura. I know you've sort of quoted a number of different provisions there that, you know, have got a range of prices, but on average it looks as though the average placement for an independent school is give or take around about £50,000. So, you know, that's significantly more money than the costs of Shenston Lodge and the Orchard Meadows or Westminster. But with regards to the sort of the actual numbers that are on this independent schools data sheet, in terms of ASD, we've got 15 students that are independent in independent schools according to this, or out of borough, maybe just cancel that, versus 75 in SEMH. I'm just wondering why we're in a situation where there's an ASC school setting up on the edges of Sandwell that's going to be taking the equivalent of 100 ASD kids, and then a primary provision that's going to be set up for a similar sort of number. When in terms of the numbers that are showing on this, in terms of outer borough, there's not that many really.
Yeah, and I think it's about the data that's coming through in terms of the predictive data and the soft data we're getting from inclusion support. So in terms of our current trends, we're looking at possibly over 112, 120 kids that inclusion support are identifying as ASD that might need specialist provision going forward, compared to, say, 30, 40 kids maybe with SEMH. We've increased SEMH provision throughout the authority already, and like you say, we are increasing our ASD provision. But again, in terms of the needs that are coming through and the development of the ASD specialist schools, High Point and Elms, they're going to be like drip feeding in terms of their pupil cohort numbers as they open. They're not going to open to all children all at the same time in the first year. So we have to plan ahead for those children as well. We're looking at around 5 years before, for instance, the Elm Tree Park primary is fully operational. So in terms of a long-term strategy, yes, we'll have the ASD numbers in terms of the specialists, but we do anticipate we are going to need more.
So, I mean, if you're looking at a 5-year projection then with regards to ASC, if you have a 5-year projection with all the other categories of need? Are we sort of looking then at requiring more places across the whole of the spectrum of needs?
Well, I think in terms of our predictive data, we are looking at increasing, an increase in our specialist provisions. But again, when we come to do the full consultation around specialist provisions, we're going to have to look very carefully about how and where we place the kids. As we all know, the complexity of the kids are increasing. However, in terms of, we still need to have that right balance between mainstream and specialist within the local authority. At the moment, we've got 64% of our kids in mainstream schools, and it just shows what a really inclusive authority we are. We are going to need more specialist provision going forward. But again, it's about balancing it with the budget as well.
Thanks, Moira. Julie?
Yeah, I just think it's also sort of making a note that some of our really high cost SEMH students that we flagged on there are not actually, when we say they're not in borough, they're actually outside the borough, and a lot of them are looked after whereby they're actually living in that area. So we've got Burton-on-Trent, the Bladen House, we've got one in Cumbria, we've got one in Atherstone. So we've got students that are actually living out of the borough that we necessarily wouldn't accommodate within the borough anyway. And I think it's worth noting those as part of the numbers.
Yeah, I think for me it'd be nice when we sit down and talk about what the longest term strategy is to maybe look at what the Sandwell as an authority might be able to provide moving forward, even if it's just in tackling very small high needs kids. Then that's something that certainly from my point of view as well, I've just got to be careful of my conflicts of interest in here, that would be very interested in talking to the LA about.
And we welcome that conversation as well, Neil, in terms of working with the special heads, the FPs and our mainstream head teachers as well around accommodating as many of these children as we can within Sandwell.
Okay, thank you. Has anybody else got any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Right, item 7 on the agenda, which is any other business. Okay, no hands are going up. So on that, I will thank everybody for their attendance today. It's really good to see you all, and I hope you have a fantastic Christmas break and enjoy yourself, assuming you can get into a place where you're not going to be locked down. So I've been distracted there. Somebody's sending things, messages on the side. Right, okay. Thanks very much, everybody. The next meeting will be the 18th of January and 2021, and again, it'll be a virtual one. Okay. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.